What's going on, everybody? Back at it again. What have we learned, folks? We've gotten this far into the season, all the way. We're looking into week 8, and do we know a lot about our teams at this point? Do we not know a lot about our teams?
I'm back.
Oh, who is that?
That is
What?
over
Where
your
did
left
that come
shoulder.
from? Where did that come? Where?
Right here.
Where?
I am back, and it is week 8, and I've missed a lot of football. Well, I haven't missed any
there
football.
He is.
I haven't missed any football. I've watched it all, but I haven't been on this podcast. It feels good to be back. It's crazy. We're over halfway done with the season. Sad to think about because we wait all those months for it to come back. But I'm back, and Brandon's done a great job holding it down. But now you'll hear two voices on the podcast and on the live show as I am back and we are in business, and I'm ready to talk about week 8 and maybe recap a little bit of week 7. How are you doing, Brandon?
I'm good. I'm great. I'm just so excited. You know, we wait all year, and you know, we can't wait for college football to get here. And it seems like all we do is talk about the games. We can only talk so much, and that's what everybody, whether it's like us or it's people on TV, people on the radio, you can talk as much as you want, but until we get to these games and, you know, until we see what these teams can do, that's when we really learn a lot. And we've learned a lot so far, wouldn't you say?
Yes, indeed we have.
Really, how many unknowns are there at this point? Week 8, there's what?
There's
a few
a
weeks
good
left.
bit of unknowns. Let's start with an unknown. This is kind of let's just segue into week 7. There was an unknown that came out this week. Brock Bowers, the tight end for the University of Georgia, possibly the best player in the country regardless of position. An argument can be made there. But there is no arguing that he is the best player on the Georgia Bulldogs, Brandon. Mm-hmm. And he came down with a high ankle sprain, and he's having to have that tightrope surgery, the same one that Tua had a couple years ago. It's pretty common practice now, but Tua was the first one to kind of have it that I remember. And he had that ankle repaired, I believe, on Tuesday morning. And they're saying it's about a 4 to 6 week recovery time on average. Tua came back a little quicker. He came back in 28 days, and then he had it again and came back in 21 days. But Brock Bowers is an amazing player. He probably heals a little quicker than most, or like someone like me. But I will say, you know, Tua came back quick, but Brock Bowers has to cut a lot more and run a lot more than Tua did. So this is a position at tight end where he has to block. He's going to be putting a lot of weight on that ankle. I would expect it to take up to 4 to 6 weeks. That's a big blow for the Georgia Bulldogs and a big unknown going forward for Georgia. You lose your best player, you're going into the hardest stretch of your schedule. They've got to play Florida neutral site, then Missouri comes to Athens off of a bye. Then they play Ole Miss in Athens, then they go to Tennessee. And they're doing it without their best player, more than likely. That's a big unknown for the number 1 team in the land, the Georgia Bulldogs. That's the first thing that came to mind for me when you said unknown. Is there any unknowns from this week or past weeks that we still have to worry about, Brandon?
Well, I would say, you know, well, we've had talk in previous weeks about if we're just talking about the SEC in particular, you know, talking about the East and the West, and I thought that the East was maybe more interesting. At least it was the first half of the season.
Yeah.
Up until this point, it's kind of unknowns. Obviously, Georgia was, you know, what Georgia is, but then say I think beginning of the season or before the season, I should say, we really had Kentucky up there as a good number 2, possibly behind Georgia, and of course Missouri has done a lot. They've kind of, I don't want to say come out of the woodworks, but they've definitely earned their stripes. And Tennessee, we'll see this weekend, and we'll get into that here in a little while. But
I think you got to give us credit. I think we said Missouri would win 7 or 8. which, they've got 6 right now. And looking at their schedule, I think they're going to get 8. They could get 9. I mean, they could rip off 10. But, yeah, Missouri, like you said, just say it. They came out of the woodwork a little bit. It's okay to say that. They surprised a lot of people. Especially, I mean, man, they hung in there with LSU. I'm sure you talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
That was a great game. Battle of the Tigers there. But I got an unknown for you, and this is kind of unscripted, unplanned. We're just two guys talking football. I heard it on another show, and I've seen it going around the Twitter. Brandon, picture this scenario. Right now, it might be the first time since the college football playoff era started. It might not be. I'm not sure. But right now, every Power 5 conference has one undefeated team, or at least one undefeated team in every Power 5 conference. Answer me this as an unknown. What would happen if the season ended and all 5 Power 5 school or conferences had an undefeated undefeated conference champ? So the Pac-12 had an undefeated conference champ, SEC, ACC, Big Ten, and Big 12. There's only 4 playoff spots, 5 undefeated conference champs. Who would get left out in that scenario, in your opinion, Brandon? I've been thinking about that today. I saw it on Twitter. A lot of people were saying their ideas and such, and I have an idea of who I think would get left out, but I kind of want to hear what you think. So let's just say, because the undefeated teams, let's say Washington wins the Pac-12 undefeated.
Okay.
Georgia wins the SEC undefeated. Florida State wins the ACC undefeated. Oklahoma wins the Big 12 undefeated. And Michigan or Ohio State, whichever one you want to use, wins the Big 10 undefeated. Or Penn State, I guess.
That is so tough. I mean, because they all finish undefeated. They win their conference titles. That's tough. I mean, obviously you would have to let the SEC in there. I know there's a lot of SEC haters out there. Maybe not the demographic of people that would be watching or listening to this show here. But you have to let assuming it's Georgia, right?
It would be Georgia would be the only undefeated. And honestly, Brandon, unbiased take here. I'm an SEC homer. Georgia, if they did go undefeated and won the SEC title, they might have, out of all the conference champions, the weakest schedule, which is surprising. But like you said, you can't leave out the SEC championship.
Right.
The SEC champion,
Considering the competition in the West, because that SEC championship game in itself would not be easy if it's Alabama, which it most likely will be, their competition in that game. But going from there, I think, say the Big Ten is always interesting to me.
I feel like whoever wins the Big Ten's in. They're not going to leave out Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State.
I don't have a doubt. See, you've got 3 right there that are all capable.
And they could play a tough. Like, we can't hate on the Big Ten. I mean, they all have to play each other, so they would have a quality win.
They have to look. They've got some easier, less, like, I guess we would say lesser opponents, but they have to face each other, such as this week. And we'll see a big matchup this week that we'll talk about later between Ohio State and Penn State. But then you've got Ohio State, Michigan at the end of the year. And, depending on where the teams are, we saw how the playoff turned out last year with Ohio State and Michigan right there at the end of the year. Does it matter or does it not matter?
And I'm sorry if you're North Carolina Tar Heel. They're also undefeated in the ACC and don't have to play Florida State in the regular season, so they could hypothetically win the ACC. I've come up with my answer, Brandon.
Okay.
I think, as sad as it is, I think the ACC would get left out. And here's my reasoning. You can't leave out the SEC or Big Ten. There's 2 spots taken. Washington just beat a top 10 team in Oregon. They will have to play USC either in the regular season or in the conference championship. That'd be another top 25 win if USC continues to win. I don't think you can leave them out. They also have the odds-on favorite right now to win the Heisman. You can't leave him out for ratings purposes also. And Washington's a good team. So there's 3 spots filled. Then the Big 12, how can you leave out Oklahoma if they beat Texas twice after Texas beat Alabama earlier this year?
Yeah.
And I think Florida State would get left out because what would you say right now is Florida State's best win? It would have to be LSU or Clemson, right?
Yeah.
And Clemson already has 2 losses. They lost to Duke bad to open the season. And their other best win is LSU, which looked at the beginning of the year when they beat LSU, it looked like an awesome win, right?
Yeah.
But it hasn't looked as good since they beat them. They lost to Ole Miss. They played Missouri very close. I'd say Florida State, based on resume, gets left out just because their best 2 wins wouldn't equal the best win of the other conferences, and that's crazy to think about because what was everybody saying when Florida State beat LSU this year? The first game, everybody was like, "Oh man, Florida State's a real national title contender. They're legit. They have a real good shot to make the playoffs." I don't think this situation will happen where every conference champion's undefeated, but if it did, man, how sick would you be if you're Florida State and you wake up and they show the rankings and you're 5th? And you're not going to the college football playoff undefeated and conference champions.
That would be tough. That would really be tough. Look, and the thing about Florida State is, it seems like I don't know what the toughest. I don't even want to say the toughest conference, but let's look at the top players, the top teams in each conference. These conferences that we just mentioned. And which one has had the most stellar year? Like, even in the SEC, we know that this is kind of like a down year, right? And in the ACC, maybe a little bit different there. You've got more teams. I like to say it was this way with Clemson a while back. It was like Clemson on up there for a pretty good amount of time, sort of at a significant gap, and then everybody else. Obviously, Florida State was up there. At times they won a championship, and maybe certain others. But I think there's more equality, I guess you would say, in the ACC, at least in my opinion. But with that being said, you had Florida State, having a close game with Boston College a few weeks ago.
Struggle win.
Struggle win. It was kind of, I don't want to say unexpected, but that was a tough battle there.
Well, here's the crazy thing, man. I think you're kind of agreeing with my point. Florida State would probably get left out, right? Would you say that, or do you think it's a different team? Because here's my thinking. I think Florida State, I've already explained, would get left out. But if Florida State played Oklahoma on a neutral field right now, who do I think would win? I would pick Florida State to beat Oklahoma, but at the end of the season, I think Oklahoma would have the better resume.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing.
I would agree with that.
What do you do if you're the committee there? Do you go with the better resume, or do you go with the team you think would beat the other team? And this is all hypothetical, people. This is a 99% chance of not happening. But in the 1% chance it does happen, we're just throwing out unknowns and hypotheticals. I think it's fun to think about. I honestly would probably pick Florida State to beat Oklahoma on a neutral site right now. But I think Oklahoma right now has a better win. They beat Texas in a rivalry game. Texas's only loss, I think that's better than beating LSU or Clemson.
Yeah.
So,
well, all right. So, I mean, and I'm enjoying this right here as we move to the other coast of the country here. In the Pac-12, there's been a lot of really good competition there. It's kind of surprising to me. It may not be
teams in football.
It may not be surprising to you, but it's surprising as heck to me that they've really picked it up this year. USC and of course Washington,
Oregon State, UCLA, Washington State, all ranked. I think Washington State just dropped out, but they were ranked.
Yes.
Good conference. And it's kind of sad and funny that in the last year of their existence, it's probably one of the best years as a conference as a whole.
Oh, man, you've got even Utah. You got Utah in there. Pretty tough.
Oh,
fairly tough.
I forgot the Pac-12 the reigning Pac-12 champs.
Colorado.
That's a different
subject. What do you think about the Buffaloes?
I mean, they're a little better than I expected. I mean, admittedly, I didn't think they'd beat TCU or that they would even beat Nebraska before the season started, and they did. But
Yeah.
I think people definitely got way ahead of themselves after the first few weeks, and people were like, oh, man, Colorado. I even saw people literally, I wish I would have screenshot on Twitter saying that they had a shot to go to the national title, saying that, the way their offense looked, nobody was going to be able to stop it. Man, I mean, they're making the best out of what they got, but they have no depth on defense. Their defense is awful. Travis, man, listen to this. That double overtime loss where they blew a 29-point lead to Stanford, the 1-4 Stanford Cardinal.
Everybody went to bed and the inevitable happened.
Travis Hunter got, roasted in the second half. He got ate up on defense.
Yes.
He was so tired. This man played, listen here, he played 157 snaps in elevation coming off of an injury.
Yeah.
I was listening to the Cover 3 podcast, and Joel Klatt, no, not Joel Klatt, Danny Cannell, he used to play college or in the NFL.
Yes.
In the NFL, they don't even want their players, when they play at Denver, they don't even want their players playing over 60 snaps in the elevation. Travis Hunter played 157. That's on Dion. That's a coaching thing. You can't let the kid... He got killed in the second half. He was too tired. Especially coming off of an injury where he hadn't played a game in like 3 weeks. You play him 157 snaps. I feel like that's bad coaching, man. That's what that comes down to. And I don't like some of the attitude of the Colorado players either. That's how I feel. They're either going to make a bowl at 6-6 or just miss at like 5-7.
That attitude that they have, and I understand. Like people are like, "Oh, it's Coach Prime. It's what he's all about. It's the atmosphere that he brings to a team, to a locker room." And look, I mean, that's all fine and dandy if you're going to be successful. But if you're out there and if you don't put a game away like you did. If you perform like they performed in the recent weeks, I mean, it looks pretty bad, honestly. And I don't know. And obviously, you, like many, went to sleep because you saw, what's going to happen in that game. Like you see.
Yeah, I looked. It was 29-0. I said it's over.
I was sitting here doing some work, and I pulled it up on the TV. I was like, I'm going to watch, see what's going to happen here. And it was getting very interesting towards the end of the game, and they kept coming back. Stanford kept coming back. They kept fighting. I'll give it to them. They fought really hard there, and they didn't just lay down and go to sleep. Call the dogs off, man. They went full force right at them. And towards the end of that game, you could tell, like, as Stanford was getting closer and closer when they had tied the game and when they was going into overtime, it seemed like every play they was putting the camera on Deion Sanders, and he just had this, like, just blank stare on his face, like, angry, just blank stare, no emotion. I don't think he was even saying any words. He wasn't coaching his players at that point in the game. He was basically letting his assistants were fired up, like they were getting into it. They were angry. It was not a good sideline. It was not a good moment. I don't know what that boils down to. I mean, is Deion's? What do we know about Deion Sanders? He coached at Jackson State in Mississippi.
He can recruit. He's
got the
he's the face of college football right now. I mean,
he does this back in the day. It obviously doesn't work in this new modern social media time period that we're in, this pop culture time period we're in. That's it's like eyeballs, and I think, like, you're bringing people into the sport that are that probably wouldn't otherwise even entertain watching a college football game, which is good in a way. There's good and bad things to that, but
he's an enigma, man. We've never seen anything like it, whether we like it or not. He is the face of college football. My wife, I've taken her to SEC football games. I watch SEC football all the time. She probably can't name, and that's fine. That's not her thing. She can't name probably 5 players on my favorite team's team. But every time the Aflac commercial comes on, she says the same thing. There's Prime.
Yep.
Every time it comes on, she knows who Deion Sanders is, and that says a lot. I mean, she watches zero football on her own volition. She only sees it when I have the TV on, and she knows who Deion Sanders is. She knows who Primetime is. He's that big of a deal. The only question I have is he going to be? He's going to be able to recruit. He's going to be able to bring people in. Can he manage them?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah.
And we'll see. That's another unknown. We'll see. It's all going to play out. It'll all pan out.
Because I mean, you feel like you've got to give him time. Like people aren't patient. He's got to develop. He basically has a brand new team. Obviously, he has a brand new team. It's his first year coaching there at Colorado, but he brought in a lot of transfers from the portal. Will this Colorado team be in the playoff? Well, obviously they have a lot better chance, on forward as the playoff expands to 12 teams. So there's even a greater chance of them making it to a playoff. But looking, say, 2 years ahead to 2025, are they in the playoff, or are they competing like right there? Essentially fighting for a playoff spot is what I'm trying to say.
I'm going to say no.
No?
I mean, he's going to have the talent. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, but if I had to just put money, like you said, you don't have an option, put money on the table, I'd say no.
Yeah.
I'll say there's going to be a lot of drama in Boulder in the next 2 years. Just get used to seeing. I don't think Deion is going to be very good at managing his players' emotions, and I feel like it's going to be a madhouse. I feel like there's going to be you're going to see videos of people screaming at coaches. You're going to see wild press conferences.
Yep, I can see that. At some point, the shine's going to wear off, and it's not going to be cute and
I think it'll always have an entertainment value to someone who just wants to watch, but I don't think they'll ever be a great football team like you're considering like their national title contenders. I think it'll be entertaining, and Colorado, I mean, they've raked in so much money already. I think they'll benefit, and like their games will still be in prime time.
Oh yeah.
No pun intended. And entertainment value up, quality of the football team, I don't know so much about.
Well, I won't, and I don't know if we want to go into very much detail, but we're seeing a certain thing in the NFL that's kind of, it's not the same, but it's similar with people from the outside watching sports, watching football, getting into it that otherwise wouldn't. I think we all know what I'm talking about here.
I'm just glad she put the NFL on the map.
I know, right? The poor, struggling sports organization.
We don't say her name around here, but you all know who we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, we don't.
Yeah, don't.
We won't say what we do in private, but here on the air, we will not entertain that.
All right, let's jump into it, Brandon. You just want to get into.
Let's take a look at this SEC slate. So there's some. We've had bye weeks. We had a couple teams, Ole Miss and Mississippi State in particular, last week. They had the week off, much needed rest, or I guess it depends on how you look at it. Some people see that negatively, but I think if you're, especially somebody like Georgia, and I know Ole Miss had some injuries in the previous week, and they got to rest. If you're somebody like Georgia and you've got an injury, that kind of, that gives you a week to rest. Would you agree with that? What's your opinion on the bye week?
On the bye week, didn't think we'd be having this combo.
Nope.
I
Quickly.
did think about it today, though. I think bye week's good. You're out there, you're running into 300-pound men if you're on the offensive line. You're tackling full-speed runners if you're on defense.
Yeah.
You are getting tackled by people running full speed. I think the bye week's a good thing to rest, heal, and game plan and get your mind off football.
It all depends. I think it all
days.
depends on what you. It just depends on how. Some people say it's a momentum killer. Some people say it's much needed to, do what you just said. I don't know if it really matters regardless.
I can see it being a momentum killer, but in my opinion, college football is not really built on momentum. This is a whole nother thing because this will get into I don't think the 12-team playoff's a good idea. College basketball is built on momentum. You can get hot and stay hot. College football is more, they got better players than we do. Yes, you can pull off an upset every once in a while, but you're not gonna, if you're Appalachian State, they beat Michigan in like 2007, was it? Like one of the greatest upsets.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, if they played that same Michigan roster 4 weeks in a row, they're not beating them all 4 weeks just because they have momentum.
It's
that's a whole different topic. But
yeah,
I don't think momentum plays a huge role. Now, in a game, I think momentum does, if that makes sense.
But if we're talking about week to week,
week to week, I don't think it is that big of a deal because if you've got more talent than the other team, I think that'll show up on Saturdays.
Even in another way, like a tough stretch in your schedule, say you have, I don't know, like 2 or 3 really, really, really tough conference opponents, like back to back to back. Like I can see how that could be tough.
Well, how many times have we seen a team lose to someone they shouldn't have, and then the next week they're right back to normal? We see that all the time. Like,
oh yeah,
I just had a good example in mind. Florida, for example, they had all the momentum in the world.
Yep.
They just they beat Tennessee in the swamp. No, excuse me. They lost.
They lost
to Utah on the road against a backup quarterback.
Correct.
They have no momentum. 2 weeks later, they beat Tennessee, like out of nowhere. Like, I don't know if momentum week to week plays that big of a deal. That's just my opinion. You might fully disagree. In a game, yes, momentum plays a big thing, like if the crowd's into it and all that. But week to week, I think so many different outcomes can happen in any given game on a football field. I feel like just because this outcome happened, it doesn't mean the next week.
Well, that's like looking at, like, some people say that you shouldn't go on past successes or past failures because every year is a new year, every season is a new season, every week is a new week. So, and anything can happen. But let's segue over. Let's finally get to this SEC slate for Week 8. And there's a couple good games on here. I'm pulling it up right now. And basically what we're going to do here, Zach, I'm going to just go through here. We're going to go through the slate, and then we'll start talking about these games individually. How does that sound?
Sounds good. If you're listening to the podcast, you're not going to be able to see this schedule, but Brandon will read it for you. If you're on video, welcome, and it's on the screen.
Starting right here on, let's see, 11 a.m. This is Central Time, by the way. That would be 12 Eastern for all those of you on the East Coast or in that time zone. You got Mississippi State traveling to Arkansas to play the Razorbacks. 11 a.m. kick, ESPN. Must win, really, for both teams. Obviously, both teams can't win, and both teams certainly can't lose, but these teams need some momentum. I know we just talked about momentum, but look, it's
they need to stop the skid.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Let's move on to the next game in the slate. Number 17, Tennessee goes to Tuscaloosa to face the number 11th ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. That's the 2:30 Central Time kick on CBS. The SEC game of the week.
Brad and Gary.
That's right.
Gary's getting his wish. He's in Tuscaloosa.
Yep. They missed it a few weeks. I guess this would be the first time for him this year because they had a different crew a few weeks ago when Ole Miss was down there. But anyway, how do you think they're going to feel next year when they're up in Big Ten country?
Man, they're going to love Northwestern versus Illinois.
I'm telling you. You're looking live at a packed-out 37,000 strong here for, 2-5 Rutgers. And,
versus the 1-7 or 1-6 Northwestern Wildcats. It's snowing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be rough.
16 degrees, 25-degree wind, or 25-mile-an-hour winds. All good. The next game, this one's also at 2:30 Central on the SEC Network. You got the South Carolina Gamecocks traveling to Como, Columbia, Missouri, to play the number 20 ranked Missouri Tigers. And moving on further into the night, number 13 ranked Ole Miss Rebels go to Jordan-Hare to face the Auburn Tigers at 6 p.m. Central on ESPN. And the final SEC game of the slate in Week 8 is Army. It's an interesting matchup here. Army traveling down to Baton Rouge, to Death Valley, to face the number 19 ranked LSU Tigers, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on the SEC Network. On a scale of 1 to 10, Zach, what do you think about this slate for the SEC this week?
This is the kind of like the middle point of the season where you're going to see a lot of teams on bye.
Yeah.
We're not getting to see Georgia this weekend, not getting to see Kentucky, Florida, obviously some other teams that I can't think of right now. Most of the West looks like it's in action for the most part. Yes. But, yeah, there are a few teams from the West also on bye week. As far as a slate, if I had to give it like a 1 to 10, if you're just talking about the SEC slate, I mean, it's average. I mean, it's like a 6 maybe. I mean,
yeah.
It's nothing special.
I would agree with that.
Now, if you exchange that Army with like a different team at LSU for that nightcap, I'd give it a little higher. But, when you set – it's a little weird here. An Army will travel to Death Valley. That's never a good thing.
No. It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, but you want to start off with that Mississippi State-Arkansas game up at the top, and we'll talk about that a little bit now.
Yeah, we're going to go to that one.
You may remember I said Mississippi State at the beginning of the year in our little predictions. Now, hear me. Prediction means it was before it happened. It's really hard to do, really hard to tell. I had Mississippi State winning 8 games. Originally, I even said in that video I had them winning 6. It's looking more like 6 is going to be a possibility than 8. Mississippi State's looked a little rough this year. I will say something magical will happen in this game. Someone will get their first conference win. As Mississippi State sitting at 0-3.
That's a given.
Mississippi State sitting at 0-3 in the conference. Arkansas 0-4. These two teams have kind of just underperformed, in my opinion. Now, some people say Mississippi State's performing right about what we thought they would. I can't remember what we had Arkansas going. It was 6-6 or 7-5, one of those. So they're right on track to hit about that mark, probably, maybe a little less. Arkansas's kind of underperformed too. This is an interesting game. Mississippi State's coming off of a bye week. Is Arkansas, Brandon, coming off of a bye, or were they active last week? Did they play Ole Miss last week?
Yes. No, they played Alabama.
They played Alabama.
Yeah, they played Alabama.
They almost
pretty
beat
close
Alabama.
Game. Yes.
Could
you imagine that, man? Having this tough slump here in your season and beating Alabama.
So Mississippi State's had a week to prepare, a week to rest up. Arkansas's coming off of an emotional loss on the road at Alabama. I was looking. A name we haven't heard a lot this year, Brandon.
Who's that?
Raheem Rocket Sanders. We had him rated as the number 2 running back in all the SEC. Believe he's been injured this year because he's not even the leading rusher on Arkansas. Just has been a non-factor. I think he has played some, just hasn't made a huge impact, which is kind of surprising. Meanwhile, Woody Marks has been a pretty decent running back for Mississippi State. Man, I've gone back and forth. Do you want me to give you the prediction, or do you want to say a few more things about this game and then both give our prediction, or how you want to do this?
Well, we'll go over some of this a little bit more here. Let's take a look. Let's compare some stats here, because that really tells you who's going to win and lose this game. But it's kind of fun here because we talked about KJ Jefferson. And we didn't have him as high as some people surely did.
And I got roasted for it.
You did. You sure did. But all right, so we had him, middle of the road?
We had him, I believe, out of 14 quarterbacks. I think we had him 6th.
I believe that's correct. Some people had him 1 or in the top 3, which is just nuts. But, he just hasn't, I don't know if hasn't been that productive is the right way to put it, but in the same thing with Will Rogers, it's been kind of a disappointment, especially going off the year that he had last year. Just looking at some of their stats that they have so far up to this point.
Go ahead.
Will Rogers is 105 of 171, 1,275 yards, 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. KJ Jefferson's stats, for your reference, is a 124 of 188, 1,450 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 6 picks on the year so far.
Yeah, I think both these QBs have underperformed from expectations, especially Will Rogers. I mean, what we had seen in years past, he was a good quarterback, very accurate with the football, just hasn't been that this year for whatever reason. Probably has a lot to do with changing up the offensive scheme. Man, let me ask you this before we give our predictions.
Okay.
If Arkansas loses this at home and goes to 2-6, is that seat getting hot under Sam Pittman?
I think it is. I think it has to be.
You know what's crazy? What, they won 9 or 10 2 years ago?
Yeah, they were on a roll.
They won 9, I think, and like Sam Pittman, I don't think he did, but he was like top 3 in Coach of the Year voting for the entire country because he turned them around from like a 4 or 5 win team to 9, and everybody was like, "Man, Arkansas found a diamond in the rough in Sam Pittman."
He was seen very highly. I remember that.
Last year was disappointing. This year, if they dropped to 2-6 and 0-5 in conference play, I think you gotta start a conversation in Fayetteville. Now, I will say Arkansas has been better under Pittman than they were before he got there. Do you remember those years when they were losing to North Texas?
Ooh, yeah.
They were losing to teams like that. They were going 2-3 wins every year. I will say Pittman's got them better than that, but I don't know. I mean, I guess it just depends on what the standard is at Arkansas. Are you okay with having a year like this every few years where, yeah, you might win 8 or 9, but then you're going to be in the dumps again? But I think his seat gets at least a little warm. Okay, on the other side, if Mississippi State drops to 3-4, 0-4 in conference, those are conversations about Zack Arnett, or since it's his first year, it's kind of a wash.
I've heard a lot of talk about this, and I think obviously they may have jumped the gun here, and so I don't blame him personally. I mean, he got dropped into this situation. It's a terrible situation with the loss of Mike Leach, and then he immediately gets put in this head coaching role. No interim tag, the pressure straight on him, and then they go from doing the air raid offense, and then you jump straight to trying to do a more balanced offensive scheme, and they've really struggled. I mean, it's been crazy to see because Will Rogers put up all those numbers. That's all he knows is the air raid. That's all he's ever known, really. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
I mean, high school.
Air raid in high school and in college. He never had taken a snap under center in a game until he was at Mississippi State this year.
But, and so State's worked on their running game. They've tried to focus more on their running game, and they've completely abandoned the passing game, or at least trying to improve the passing game. It sure appears to be that way. They've been awful through the air.
Man, what's mind-blowing to me is the defense. Mississippi State is always known for having a pretty stingy, pretty physical defense. Man, they had the second most, or maybe the most, returning players on a defense in the entire SEC. I want to say 10 of 11, or maybe 9 of 11 starters returned, which is nuts.
Yep, that's right.
And they've always had a good defense. This year, they're not a good defense. They have allowed a lot of points. Let me look right here. I've got it. They've allowed 181 points. 177 for reference. That would be the second worst defense in the entire SEC West. And they're only behind LSU, whose defense is absolutely abysmal.
Yes.
It would also be... It's like third or fourth worst in the entire SEC. And this is a defense that's usually probably top 5 in the SEC in points allowed. So, yeah, the defense for me has been disappointing for Mississippi State. Arkansas's is just about as bad. They've allowed one less point, actually, than Mississippi State. But their defense was awful last year. So... kind of expected.
Their defense has only accounted for 5 interceptions. They've only had 16 sacks on the year, and this is through like a bunch of games. I don't know what their previous. Well, let's look back at 20. What's a year you want to compare to? You want to go 2022?
Yeah, let's just look last year because it's basically the same players.
Let's go 2022. Let's see what their defense production was like when it comes to sacks and stuff. Through the whole year, they had what is that number? 31 sacks.
So they're actually about on pace to meet that number.
31 sacks and 14 interceptions. Now
how many points did they give up? Can you pull that up through the whole year? I feel like their defense was decently solid last year. And this is Zach Arnett's the former defensive coordinator. Now he's the head coach, and the defense got worse.
It's
if you can't find it, it's okay.
Yeah,
know, people, the defense has gotten worse. I'm about to give my official prediction, though.
Do it.
I think coming off of a bye, Mississippi State comes in. They're playing Arkansas. They've had time to rest and recover. Arkansas is coming off an emotional loss in Tuscaloosa. That's why I'm taking Arkansas.
Arkansas.
I'm taking Arkansas here at home. I think they showed me a lot when they competed with Alabama last week. Now, granted, It's not the same Alabama as years past, but they still hung in there physical in Tuscaloosa. I think Mississippi State's down right now. Defense hasn't shown that they can stop anyone. I think KJ Jefferson's going to have a good day. Give me Arkansas. I would even throw a score prediction out there. I'll say Arkansas wins. I'll say 35-24 is your final. Okay. Arkansas wins by 11.
You say 35-24?
Yeah, that's my official prediction.
And I should have mentioned this a minute ago. The line is Arkansas -6.5. I tend to agree with you on that. I mean, Mississippi State is they're in I like to say an identity crisis. They really don't know.
That's a good way to put it.
They really don't know what they're doing. They really don't know how to go forward. And Arkansas,
they ain't much better. Let's be honest. These are the two bottom teams in the West.
Correct.
Auburn's better than these teams.
Yeah.
Even though Auburn can't throw, their defense is a lot better than both of these teams.
That has to be so frustrating for Hugh Freeze, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I agree with you there. I say Arkansas. I would say a touchdown. I would say a touchdown. I won't say a score, but I would say Arkansas
come on.
gets a touchdown.
Have some fun. 35-24.
You say 35-24?
Yeah.
I say 31-24.
31-24. So pretty similar scores here. All right, Brandon, let's move on to the next game.
What do we have next here, sir?
I feel like we took more time than most people in Mississippi State versus Arkansas.
No. All right. Well, let's just see what's next on the docket here. You want to take a guess?
I believe it's going to be that South Carolina-Missouri game.
No!
No, it's not. It's going to be Army traveling to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to play the Bayou Bengals of LSU. Army comes in at 3, and does that say 3-4?
2-4. Army is 2-4.
Army's 2-4. LSU sitting at 5-2. LSU's the 19th ranked team in the land. I don't want to spend much time on this. Let me just say, Jaden Daniels is having a Heisman type season. If they didn't have those couple losses, he'd probably be your front runner for the Heisman. Their offense is the best offense in the SEC. Just for reference, LSU this year has scored 212 points. No, excuse me, that was wrong. LSU has scored 317 points.
Yes.
The next closest, you got to guess at who it is?
In the SEC?
Yeah, LSU scored 317. Who's the next closest?
It's got to be Ole Miss, doesn't it?
It's Georgia at 281. So they've scored.
Really?
They've scored about 40 more points than the next closest.
Wow.
LSU's offense is that good. Their defense is that bad. They've allowed the most points in the SEC on defense, giving up 212. Excuse me. Vandy's technically the worst. But LSU has the second worst defense in the SEC, giving up 212. Yeah, that's a lot more than anybody else not named Vandy. The next closest would be South Carolina, and they've given up 30 more than South Carolina. So LSU's defense is bad. Offense is one of the best in the entire country.
Yeah.
Army's not good.
Tigers that is a heck of a it's like night and day offense and defense.
LSU, it reminds me of those a lot of Ole Miss teams through the years.
It so does. It's so painful.
LSU beats Army here. I'll give you a score prediction.
You want to know the line? The line is LSU 32 points.
Army, they run the triple option, I believe. I think they still do that. LSU, it's not gonna be close, folks. Give me LSU. I'll say the final score in this one is 48 to. I'll say 48-17. I don't know if that's cover or not. I can't do quick math. I don't think it is. Probably right under a cover. Give me 48-17 LSU at home.
It's hard to cover 32 points.
It is.
We had this discussion with Georgia and Vandy, man. I think that the line was like 30. It was somewhere like that, like 36 or something.
Yeah.
That's just so hard to cover, regardless of who you are and who you're playing. You say 48-17?
Yeah.
48-17?
I mean, they're probably going to get over 50, but I don't know. I said Army would get 17 just because LSU's defense is that bad.
52-20.
52-20 says Army's going to score 20 points, which is not that surprising. On
Garbage time points.
Yeah. 52-20. They win by 32, so it's a push. No cover.
No cover. Now, look, hey, I know we don't need to talk too much about this game any further, but Jaden Daniels, man, has just absolutely impressed me.
Oh, his numbers are absolutely ridiculous. Could you just...
He is a little reckless with his body, with his health, but...
Will you just read his stats off, because they're absolutely insane? Like, you don't even have to do his rushing, which he became the first LSU player in history to have 5,000 passing, 1,000 rushing in a career, which is nuts.
Jaden Daniels, in 2023 so far, his numbers, passing yards, he's 152 of 208, 73.1% completion average, which is pretty good.
That's insane.
2,294 yards, 11 average. He's had 22 touchdowns, only 3 picks. His longest was 75 yards.
And I think he's ran for like 4. He's got like 26 total touchdowns almost only halfway through the season. He's on pace for literally 62 or 52, which is an insane number of total touchdowns. I mean, that's Heisman numbers.
His total numbers, he had 2,294 yards. Is that right? Let's just look at his rushing here. Yeah. He's had 4 touchdowns, 515 yards.
Yeah, he's on pace for over 1,000 rushing yards.
Yeah, and he'll get there.
He's insane.
He'll get there.
Man, he could win the Heisman. I'll say if they win out, if they beat Bama, they're in the SEC title because one of LSU's losses is out of conference. So
right,
they'd be tied with Bama and have the tiebreaker. So LSU could go to the SEC championship, and if they were to somehow win the SEC championship, you could see Jaden Daniels hoisting up that Heisman Trophy. I mean, a lot would have to happen, but I wouldn't say he's out of it. He's definitely right now probably second in my mind in the Heisman race.
I agree. Right. Let's move on, shall we? What do you want to do next? What's the next game here on the schedule? South Carolina and Missouri.
All right, so 2-4 South Carolina, 1-3 in conference, traveling to Como to play the 6-1 and the 3-1 in conference Missouri, 2-1 in conference Missouri Tigers, ranked 20th in the land. Yeah, this is going to be, I think, a real interesting game. Speaking of unknowns, oh man, will Shane Beamer be able to walk around the game with his broken foot because he kicked a Gatorade cooler after they lost to Florida and broke a bone in his foot?
Yeah.
I have some thoughts on Shane Beamer, but we'll save those for a different episode. So South Carolina's traveling to Missouri. Look, man, Missouri has surpassed all expectations. Brady Cook, credit to us. We had him ranked pretty low, but I do specifically, and go back and watch our QB rating. We said Brady Cook, we liked him a lot more than a lot of people. A lot of people had him near the bottom of QB rankings in the SEC. I think we had him 9th, I want to say. And we even said we like Brady Cook a lot. We like what he can do, and he's been really good this year for Missouri. Now, I know he threw a pick 6 late in that game against LSU, but I mean, that game was probably over anyway. Missouri's been really good this year. Luther Burden might be the best receiver in the entire country. He's leading all the country in receiving yards. Luther Burden is having a incredible year for Missouri. Might win the Biletnikoff Award, first team All-American, all the awards. Really good. Defense is stingy. Not great, but pretty good. South Carolina, I'd say South Carolina's been disappointing, Brandon.
I would agree with that.
You had the game won against Florida. You blew it. You hung in there with Georgia. You lost. You lost to Tennessee. There's your 3 conference losses right there. You lost to North Carolina to open the year, which that turned out to be not a bad loss because North Carolina's a top 10 team now. But South Carolina's been a little disappointing. Especially the momentum they had coming in from last year. You remember they beat Tennessee and beat Clemson to end their regular season last year, and they were on an all-time high. And, they set too high of expectations, maybe. Yep. It's kind of like when maybe you purposely missed a few on the test so you'd only make a B+, so your parents wouldn't expect you to make an A every time.
Uh-huh.
Maybe South Carolina did that at the end of last year, but, man, this is going to be a tough game for South Carolina. 2:30 going to Missouri. It's going to be sold out. It's going to be pretty rowdy probably because Missouri's 6-1. They got a good team. Their fans are going to be pumped up.
Yep.
Man, I just flat out think Missouri's got a better football team than South Carolina does. That's what it comes down to. Eli Drinkowitz is doing a great job there, man. South Carolina, I feel like that loss at Florida might have been the loss that broke the camel's back. Having the game won and then blowing it. Give me Missouri, man. The line is what about
what's the line in this game? Yeah,
6.5 maybe.
It's 7.5.
7.5. It's gone up. Usually Vegas knows. I'm taking Missouri. Give me Missouri. Final score. I like that defense of Missouri. Give me 31 to. I'm going to take 31-13. They're going to beat them pretty good.
Okay.
Give me the Tigers. I like Missouri in this one. I like them to cover. I think they'll be 7-1, and all of a sudden we're looking around and saying, man, if Missouri beats Georgia in 2 weeks, Missouri will be in the SEC championship game possibly. So, yeah, give me Missouri. Give me Missouri to cover.
So they shut down Spencer Rattler, essentially.
Yeah, I think they.
And that's the funny thing about Spencer Rattler is earlier in the year we were really high on him. I think a lot of people were because he was showing himself, as being a top. I don't remember what we originally ranked him, but being a top at least 3 or 4 quarterback in the SEC, and since then he just hasn't done a whole lot. Here's some of his stats right here. He's 142 of 193, 1,724 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions.
He was really hot to start the year. I mean, he was probably the best quarterback in the SEC the first few weeks. He's just kind of gone downhill. Injury to their best receiver against Georgia, out for the year, the broken leg. It's just rough.
On the flip side of Brady Cook, just looking at his stats, he's 154 of 217, 2,054 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 3 picks.
And he's good with his legs as well. He is.
You got Cody Schrader, that's had 114 carries, 648 yards, and 7 touchdowns.
Yeah, he's second in the SEC in rushing yards.
He is. And through the air, I would say Missouri's a pretty balanced team.
Yeah, they kind of run it. And Luther Burden, I mean, he's got like 600-something receiving yards already, on pace for over 1,400 yards, I think, something like that.
Yeah, he's 808 yards.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, on 56 receptions, 5 touchdowns.
He's on pace for over 100 catches. 10. Yeah, he's on pace for some insane numbers. Brandon, what you picking in this game, man?
I got to pick Missouri. I'm excited for their fans because I know that they've been looking for some success. I know Eli Drinkowitz, you don't want to get put on the hot seat. Now, I don't know. if this was going to be a hot seat year, if next year was going to be a hot seat year, if they didn't produce.
100% agree. His back was kind of against the wall.
Yeah. And he's managed, I think he's breathing a sigh of relief that they've done what they've done so far. Of course, they get that good win against Kansas State right there on that 61-yard field goal early in the year that really, kind of catapulted them forward.
Gave them momentum, if you will.
Yeah. Keep coming back to that momentum thing.
Hey, man, it's great. Missouri wins this game, like I said. They have every goal they came into the season wanting. Every goal they set, that's still obtainable, which is awesome for their fan base. To think Missouri realistically can get to the SEC championship, and if they win it, they could get to the playoffs. Like, if they win out, I'm not, like I said, this is one of those things I don't think's gonna happen. But I mean, man, if they were, I'm just saying all their goals are still obtainable. Yeah. Whereas South Carolina, none of your goals you set are obtainable. I'm sure our goal is to win the East, or it should be, and that's not on the table. Missouri, it's kind of flip-flopped here. South Carolina, feel like their season's kind of done.
Yeah.
Missouri, they've got everything left in front of them. What's your final score prediction?
I'm going to say 31-17 Missouri.
31-17, taking the Tigers.
Yep.
I agree.
Yep.
Tigers win.
Let's move on forward here to our next game. We're getting into the what would you say, the higher level, the higher tier games from this week, at least in the SEC here. We've got Ole Miss, number 13 ranked Ole Miss Rebels, going to Jordan-Hare to face the Auburn Tigers. 3-3 Auburn Tigers, coached by fresh coach Hugh Freeze, of all people.
Former Rebel.
Former
Flame as well.
That's
up there
correct.
In Liberty.
That's correct.
But, you got Ole Miss traveling down to Jordan-Hare. Man, I've thought about this game a lot this week. This is actually an interesting game stylistically, in my opinion. Auburn loves to run the football. Ole Miss, while they do run it, they have Jackson Dart, I think, is a good quarterback. Ole Miss can throw the football really well. They have thrown the football really well this season. Auburn can't throw the football. Auburn has a very stiff defense. I wouldn't say Ole Miss's is very stiff. It's not as bad as it used to be, but I wouldn't say it's a very stiff defense. So stylistically, this is a very interesting matchup. You know what's been on my mind all week, Brandon?
What's
Jordan-Hare at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
That's been on my mind a lot this week.
That's tricky.
Now,
it's always tricky.
Georgia went down to Jordan-Hare for a 2:30 matchup. Ruckus environment, rivalry game. Auburn hung in there the whole game, even though they couldn't throw the football. They schemed up ways to get in the end zone and to kick field goals, and their defense was good enough to hold a very potent Georgia Bulldogs offense, who's second in the entire SEC in scoring. Auburn held them to 26 points, or 27. Ole Miss is third in the SEC in scoring. Can Auburn do exactly what they did to Georgia and make this a physical, low-scoring game? If they do, if you click this game on in the fourth quarter and it's like 17-10, 17-13, I think Ole Miss needs to be worried if they get to the fourth quarter and it's that close. Now, if Ole Miss is able to open it up and Auburn's defense isn't able to, stay in there, because I don't think Auburn's offense is good enough to keep them in the game. It's going to have to be their defense. Mm-hmm. If you look at the scoreboard and, Ole Miss has 30 points in the fourth quarter, it's probably over at that point. Auburn wants to make this ugly. They want to make this a rock fight. As Josh Pate says, a death by a million paper cuts. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Ole Miss is too good. They'll find a way. They can throw the ball. Even though this is the kind of game Ole Miss seems to lose every year. I think of some of those Arkansas losses where Arkansas just made the game really ugly and got the win. Auburn's going to try to do the same, but I'm going to take the Rebels here. I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people I've talked to, casual fans at work and such. They don't think Auburn has a shot in this game just because what they've seen. I'm going to have to disagree. I think Auburn does have a shot, but I'm going to take the Rebels to win. I'll take Rebels 27-17. Rebels win by 10 on the road.
27-17.
Yep.
This game comes down to possibly injuries. And that's always the thing with Ole Miss. Like, who is somebody going to get hurt? I remember the last time that Ole Miss played down in Jordan-Hare, Matt Corral got pretty banged up in that game. He was actually out of that game for a while. Came back, and they just couldn't get anything done. They could not move the ball very far. Auburn just pinned them down, especially late in that game. Ole Miss couldn't get any momentum going offensively. It wasn't a high-scoring game by either team. Like, nobody just ran away with it. But it came down to that. Now you have Jackson Dart, like you had mentioned.
Yeah.
And I think he's having a pretty good year. 107 of 167, 1,638 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. One of those picks was just a miscommunication, just the receiver. The other one was just a bad throw. But, on the flip side, on the other sideline, you got Peyton Thorne and 71 of 117, 745 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He hasn't thrown the ball very much, obviously. I don't think Hugh Freeze trusts him.
I'll go under 15 pass attempts.
Under 15 pass attempts, okay.
They don't throw the ball.
But you visually see the frustration on Hugh Freeze's face, and usually he has good quarterbacks. Now, this is what he inherited, right?
I mean, well, he brought Peyton Thorne in transfer.
Ooh, that's right. Oh, man.
But, I mean, they got him pretty late in the cycle.
Well, the thing is, what is the problem? Does he need more time in the system? Well, because it's like he's missing throws. He's not
what he
performing.
Needs? More talent.
Receivers?
I don't think Peyton Thorne's good. That's not good. That hurts. They don't have good receivers. Like, I can name one pass catcher on their team, and I'm not going to say who I went to watch, but I've seen Auburn play in person this year, and I can only name one pass catcher, and I went to a game.
And you saw in person, yeah.
Rivaldo Fairweather, who's another transfer, he's their tight end. He's the only receiver I can really name. I think they have Colby Wooten, maybe is a guy's name, but they don't have talent. Man, we said this on the Auburn breakdown this year. Before the season, we said they don't have talent on the outside. They don't have anybody to throw the ball to. If you don't believe us, go back and look at our predicted standings, our schedule prediction. We said Auburn doesn't have pass catchers or weapons on the outside. They don't. Yeah. Peyton Thorne, I don't think's that great, but it's also hard to be great when you don't. I mean, guess who he was throwing to at Michigan State? A guy named Keon Coleman. He's been all right for Florida State. I would say he's probably only a top 5 receiver in the country. I mean, no big deal. But Peyton Thorne was throwing to him at Michigan State, where he put up decent numbers. Now he's throwing to Rivaldo Fairweather. No, I know that's his name. I'm just saying, it's not as good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me Ole Miss. Did you ever say what your prediction?
I didn't. Now, it is Ole Miss minus 6.5 for those of you that enjoy to like to look at the lines, maybe like to put a little bit of money on these games. Over under's 55. I think that's just they slap that over under 55 on there. That's like a standard.
Yeah.
I mean, usually it's and these odds are by Caesar Sportsbook. Usually it's 55 over under. I don't know. I think yours would have been under. You'd have picked the under based on your score. I think. Look, it's tough, right? It's tough, and that's what everybody's been talking about, and there's no doubt about that. And you have this night game, like you said, that atmosphere that you talked about. But I think Ole Miss gets it done here. But I'm going to say I'm going to give Auburn a little bit more, maybe 30-24. Give me Ole Miss.
Oh, close game here. Less than a touchdown. Win by 6. Well, that is a touchdown.
Just looking at what's happened the prior weeks. There's been a lot of close games to the Rebels this year. A shootout, I say a shootout, versus LSU. And I hesitate to call it a shootout because there was just a little bit of defense, and that's when it mattered. It wasn't like the last person to score won the game, even though that's kind of how it was. LSU nearly came back at the end, but There's been some close games, but I think Rebels get it done. They move, they get bowl eligible, they move to 6-1, and they look ahead to Texas A&M. 30-24 Rebels.
What did I say? 27-13.
You said 27-17.
27-17. All right, let's go on to I think our last SEC game.
Last SEC game. Yep, that is the number 17th ranked Tennessee Volunteers, 5-1 overall, 2-1 in the conference, going down to Tuscaloosa to play the number 11 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide, 6-1, 4-0 in the conference. Whew.
Well, I will say, it is the third Saturday in October, so these two teams will play. Last year, one of the craziest scenes I've ever seen in college football history. Tennessee knocks off Alabama on a time-expiring field goal poster turned down, thrown into the Tennessee River.
On a knuckleball.
I had friends that were there. I mean, I wish I could have been at something like that. It's awesome.
Could you imagine experiencing that?
It's awesome. I watched it live. I was jumping up and down, not for any particular team to win, just because it was an awesome, crazy football game.
Man, you see that visual when he kicks that knuckleball, it goes to the uprights, and you see that as fireworks, and that the crowd stormed onto the field. Man, that's what it's all about.
And man,
physical football.
These teams right here are eerily similar to me this year. Last year, final score I think was 48-45 or something very close to that. It was very high scoring. No defense was played. And you know what, Brandon? I think this year's the exact opposite. Alabama has a great defense, maybe the best defense in the SEC. If not, they're definitely top two. It's them or Georgia. And Tennessee would probably be the third best defense. Just as far as this isn't, this points allowed shouldn't be something you go off of and say that's the best defense necessarily, because there's garbage time, there's points on your second string, yada, yada. But just for reference, Tennessee's given up 102 points. Alabama's given up 112. Now, Tennessee has had a bye week, and Bama has not, I believe. So you have to factor that in. Georgia's given up 98. So, yeah, these are the top. Can you believe Tennessee? They had the worst defense in the SEC last year. Now they're the third best defense just statistically in the whole SEC.
That's crazy.
But their offense dropped off a cliff.
Yeah.
And Alabama's did too. Alabama can't score points like they used to. They don't have receivers on the outside named Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs. He's an idiot. But anyway, Jerry Jeudy, Najee Harris in the backfield. They don't have guys like they used to. They don't have a quarterback like they used to. They don't have a Jalen Hurts, a Tua. They don't have a Mac Jones even. But their defense has been so good this year, they've only lost one game, and it was to a good Texas team. On the flip side, Tennessee, they don't have Jalen Hyatt. They don't have Cedric Tillman. They don't have Hendon Hooker. Instead, they have Squirrel White, Joe Milton, Dante Thornton, Ramel Keaton. It's just a different group. I think they're so similar, Brandon, and it's so fascinating. Both quarterbacks have rocket arms who are known for throwing it downfield and getting big play, explosive play touchdowns, but both have struggled with accuracy. Both teams run the ball pretty effectively. Alabama has struggled a little bit running the ball this year. Meanwhile, Tennessee's the best rushing team in the entire SEC. One of the best in the entire country. When you think of Tennessee, do you think of running the ball? Because I sure don't. But they're their best rushing team in the SEC. Alabama likes to run the ball. Eerily similar here. Teams. I don't think either team trusts their quarterback all that much. I don't think Alabama trusts Jalen Milroe a ton. I really don't think Tennessee trusts Joe Milton based off some play calls I've seen this year. Man, this game fascinates me. It excites me. I'm ready to watch it. It's in Tuscaloosa. Should be a great game. Here's the weird part. Go to the Caesar Sportsbook spread or the ESPN spread on this game.
All right, it's Alabama minus 9.5.
That makes 0 sense to me. Alabama minus 9.5. When I saw that number earlier this week, I thought one thing. When you see a weird spread like this, I was thinking Alabama minus 4, Alabama minus 5. I was thinking these teams, Alabama's not that great this year. They're a good team. They have a great defense. But I think them and Tennessee are pretty similar, pretty close together. I mean, I just laid out all the ways they're similar. And then I saw Alabama minus 9.5, almost double digits. And anytime I see that, I side with the sports book. I side with ESPN. I side with Caesars. Give me Alabama. Something about that number is just fishy. It makes me think Vegas knows something. This is a revenge spot for Nick Saban. Nick Saban hasn't lost 2 straight years to the same team, but I think once in his career, and it was Ole Miss, I believe, back-to-back years, right?
Yes.
So
that's correct.
That's
in the regular season, yeah.
It's only happened one time, I believe. Nick Saban doesn't lose back-to-back years. I think Alabama, a lot of players are still on that team that lost last year. I think they're going to be fired up. Think they're going to go out there. It's a home game at Bryant-Denning. I don't know if I can trust either quarterback, but I think I can trust Milroe a little bit more right now than I can trust Milton. Give me Alabama to win. That line stinks to high heaven. I don't understand why it's that high, and it hasn't really moved just a ton. It went down to about 8.5, and then it jumped right back up to 9.5. Something's weird about it, and usually, like I said, when I see weird numbers to me that don't make, like the Auburn Ole Miss makes sense to me, 6.5. The Missouri South Carolina line makes sense to me. This one, no sense. Don't understand it. Give me Alabama to win. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, though.
I would agree.
Give me Alabama. I say Alabama's going to score 24 points, and they're going to hold Tennessee's offense, that potent offense. A weird score here. Give me 24-16. A lot of field goals for Tennessee in this one, I think. I think Alabama's going to really toughen up on their side of the field. 24-16. Nick Saban,
8 points.
Yeah, Nick Saban gets his revenge. They don't quite cover, but it's pretty close to the line.
Yeah.
And Tennessee has their second SEC loss, and that might put them out of the East picture unless Georgia loses to Tennessee and to another SEC team, which I don't really
Well,
see
overall, right now in the SEC standings, Tennessee is behind Missouri, Florida, and Georgia.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if they lose this one, Mike can wrap up the East.
That's why I've kind of not been so quick to be. I feel like some people have automatically dropped them right under Georgia, and all year I just have not felt like I can do that. I want to see what they can do. We're going to have a serious talk here next week if they win this game, but at this point I just don't know. I completely agree with you with the low scoring thing. I could definitely see that. Just looking at how Alabama's been, it's going to be I think it's going to be another one of these low scoring. They may start off slow. They may be 6 points scored in the first quarter of the game. One of those ordeals there.
Man, and I mean, I'm an idiot sometimes. Tennessee might come out and punch them in the mouth.
Never know.
Josh Heupel might get this offense rolling. Joe Milton might roll out, and he might throw and score 4 touchdowns, and we're looking up and we're like, man, Josh Heupel just has Nick Saban's number. It's 42-17 in the fourth quarter, and we're thinking, wow, Tennessee, they just put it all together. They're a real threat now to win the SEC, and well, Alabama not looking like the same old Alabama, but I just don't see that happening. It very well could, though, but like I said, I've just got a little more trust right now in Jalen Milroe, and I think this game's going to come down to the quarterbacks. Who's going to make the play at the end of the game? Who's going to make those big-time throws when they need them? Give me Alabama, like I said.
So you're saying 24-16 again,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, 24-16. A little weird of a score, but
I'll go. I feel it's just so low scoring. I feel like when you start scoring a lot of points, that's either one of those deals like last year, because you're not gonna have a blowout in this game. I just don't see that. But low scoring, I say Alabama 27, and I even hesitate. I would even say lower than that, but I'm gonna go 27 to 27-17.
Oh, they cover barely, about half a point.
Yeah.
So Brandon is taking Alabama to cover 27-17.
And look, I agree about that line too. Like honestly, I don't know what it started at the beginning of the week. Did you see?
It was 9.5.
It was 9.5. Okay.
Moved down to 9, then moved down to 8.5.
That really does surprise me. I would think it would have been, closer to a touchdown, maybe.
When it got down to 8.5, I thought in my head, oh, okay, they're about to correct it. It's going to start moving down. And I thought by the time we get to the game, it'll be about 7.5, 8.
Yeah.
And then it shot right back up to 9.5. And here we are on Thursday. It's not going to move much more at this point in the week.
It's going to be a beautiful game, beautiful weather. 70 degrees predicted here in Tuscaloosa. 2:30 Central Time kick, CBS. Like that right there. That's what it's all about, man.
Yeah,
that is going to be one heck of a football game. But yeah, 27-17. Like you was talking about Jalen Milroe, man. Jalen and Jaden gets me mixed up sometimes. Jalen Milroe is, we there were some questions about him earlier in the year. I think what Saban did in that South Florida game by not even playing him, I think that was just that was a mental thing, honestly. Taking him out, not letting him play in that game. Look, he's got here's something that's interesting to me though, Zach. You look at this offensive and defensive line that Alabama has. Like they've got some vulnerabilities, which is crazy to even say. Like they
give up a ton of sacks.
Yeah, which is unheard of. And that right there, week to week, to me, for each team is a key. Is a road to victory for each team going in there to play Alabama. Expose that line, that defensive line, or that Alabama offensive line that's having sort of a down year this year. Expose them and force Jalen Milroe to get out of the pocket, force them to make mistakes, sack them. I mean, that's what you got to do. You got to interrupt their flow here.
I should have mentioned this. Alabama gives up maybe, I think, the most sacks in the SEC. This might make you want to change your pick. Tennessee has the most sacks in the SEC for a defense, or either second. Tennessee has gotten after the passer this year. They've got 2 guys in the top 10 in the entire country in sacks. James Pierce, I'll just throw his name out there. Man's a stud. Not enough people are talking about James Pierce, edge rusher, true freshman for Tennessee. You go watch those highlights against Texas A&M. He was pressuring and pushing back the left tackle into Max Johnson's face the entire game. He's fast off the line. I'm not going to change my pick, but yeah, Tennessee's going to come after Milroe. You don't have to worry about that.
I think that's going to be a big proponent. Like I don't know how much the play at Alabama is going to affect this game. I think they're still going to perform well. I think they're going to make some things happen. But Tennessee, this is their chance. This is Alabama's chance to lose. This is Tennessee's chance to get a big win. But it's going to be a good matchup regardless. And I just don't see it. Like you said, I don't see it being a big high-scoring game.
Well, you ready to move on to the biggest game of the weekend in the entire country, not just the SEC, Brandon?
Yeah, I think we should just skip on over it. So we like to go outside the SEC, outside the footprint, get the keys, start the car.
We're going on a drive.
Going on a drive. Road trip.
Well, this road trip today takes us up to Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I've never been, but
Yep.
I've heard Ohio's kind of a dump. Sorry if you're out there and you're from Ohio.
I've always talked smack about Ohio, too. I'll try to be nice. I'll try to be as nice as I can.
They have a lot of electoral votes.
They do?
Big state to win if you're a presidential candidate.
That is exactly right. They've been one of the determining states in, what do they call it? What was it called? Battlegrounds. Is it a battleground state? Is that what they call it?
I don't watch politics enough, man. I just know
there's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, in this ball game here, the Penn State, Oh, hold on now.
Don't offend people.
I'm sorry, you Ohio State fans that may or probably aren't watching this or listening to this. Penn State, the number 7th ranked team in the country, 6-0, 3-0 in the conference. Well, of course, what else would they be at this point in the season? They travel to the Dump, the Horseshoe, up there at Ohio State to play the Buckeyes. Number 3 ranked in the country. They're also undefeated overall and in the conference. This is going to be on Fox, the Fox noon kickoff game there, 11 a.m. Central, 12 noon Eastern time. Fox should be a good game. I mean, right?
Yeah, should be a great game. Just a side note, does Fox Big Noon Kickoff, do they have the best commentary duo? Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt, right?
They are arguably they do.
Man, Gus Johnson's awesome.
I'm not as high as some people are. I know I love emotion.
He's emotional.
You know, and I feel like the only thing about that, I feel like he kind of like oversells it a little bit sometimes, which is there's nothing wrong with that, but I just feel like sometimes it's kind of.
That was just a side note, but I think they might be the best. But yeah, man, should be a great game. The Nittany Lions. I'm gonna say it. It's their year. It's either this year or it might not be ever, because look, I'm not as high as on Ohio State as a lot of other people. I know a lot of people think Ohio State, looking at you, Josh Pate, are going to go to the national championship. I'm just not so sure about that. I don't trust Kyle McCord just a ton. He's not C.J. Stroud. He's not Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace. He's not some of these great quarterbacks that you've had in the past. I don't think. Not yet, anyway. He could be. I don't know how much I trust McCord, but he's got the best weapons in the country. Emeka Ibuka, I think he's a little banged up. Not sure if he's going to play. Marvin Harrison Jr., Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis. They've got dudes. They've got the best wide receiver core in the country. Makes it a little easier for Kyle McCord. But, man, Ohio State, it's just like Tennessee and Alabama. Tennessee, what are they usually known for? Offense. What are they known this year? Defense. Ohio State's defense is elite this year. Jim Knowles came over from Oklahoma State a couple years ago, and he has got that defense looking right. Ohio State's got an elite defense this year, and they've picked up the slack that the offense is allowed. Look at that Notre Dame game. How many they allow? 17, I think, to Notre Dame, who has a pretty decent offense. So I think the story of this game is defense on both sides. Penn State's got a good defense. Chop Robinson coming off the edge. Kalen King, one of the best corners in the country. Got another really good corner. Can't think of his name right now. Defense, defense, defense. Think this is going to be a low-scoring defensive Big Ten battle. Drew Aller on the other side. First year starting for him. He was a 5-star QB a couple cycles ago. Hasn't played that well on the road. This is going to be a ruckus, 11 a.m. or 12, I guess. I don't know. Is Ohio Central Zone or are they East?
They're Eastern.
Yeah. Okay. So Ohio, it'll be 12 there. Big noon kickoff. Man, it's going to be an intense game. Who do I trust more? It kind of is like the Bama-Tennessee game. Do I trust Drew Aller more, or do I trust Kyle McCord down the stretch to make the plays? Man, why don't you talk, since this is the big game, and then we'll both give our picks at the same time.
Well, the line is Ohio State minus 4.5. I don't have just a whole lot to say about this game. I think if, like you said, if there's a time for Penn State, it's now. I don't know if vulnerable is the right word. Is Ohio State vulnerable? Would you use that terminology for the Buckeyes?
Their defense is so good. That's the thing. They have a good defense this year. Vulnerable as in
quarterback play.
Yes, as far as they do, their offense isn't as good as years past because they don't have an elite as a quarterback.
Obviously,
I would agree with that.
Obviously. Well, I mean, look, Kyle McCord has had. Let's just tell you his stats so far this year. He's 109 to 170. That's 64% completion percentage. 1,651 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Again,
efficient.
Yeah.
But they're playing nobody.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
They did play Notre Dame.
That's one of those things where, what do the stats really tell you? Well, and I'll tell you what the quarterback production on the other side is for Penn State. how you pronounce his name?
Drew Aller.
Drew Aller. We don't want to butcher anybody's name here on the program. He's 118 of 181, 65% completion percentage. 1,254 yards, 12 touchdowns, no picks so far this year.
He's been good, but if you dive deeper, which we're not going to do that on here because that would take time for Brandon to pull it up and stuff. If you dive deeper, he hasn't been as good on the road as he has been at home, and this is definitely the most ruckus road environment he's going to play or has played in this year. I think that matters. I think Ohio State, if they can get some hits on him, the crowd gets into it, he might get a little, shaky.
Yeah.
Or he might go out there and he might sling 5 touchdowns. I don't know. I will give my prediction, though. Both these teams want to run the ball. Travion Henderson for Ohio State. Nick Singleton, he's a stud. And Katron Allen for Penn State. They've got a good running back duo, both of them. This is Big Ten football. They want to run the football. They want to play good defense. Don't think they're going to ask a ton out of either quarterback. I think, yes, they will throw the ball. Don't get me wrong. Down the stretch, if they need a big play, they'll turn to their quarterback. But I don't think they're going to just ask their quarterbacks to play hero ball. I don't think they're going to throw it 50 times and say, win us the game. I will give my pick, though, Brandon.
Okay, go right ahead.
I'm going to take Ohio State to win, and it's because the defense, I feel like it's a little better than Penn State's. Might be wrong, but I feel like it's a little better. They've got weapons. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Ibuka, if he plays. Even if he doesn't, they have other weapons.
Yeah.
Yes, elite corners for Penn State, but I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is just about unguardable.
Yeah.
You can take him out of the game, by playing good defense and making it where he's just not even, if you double him the whole game, he'll still catch some, but he might not just tear you apart. But I'm going to go, it's home environment, better defense, better coach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take Ohio State, low-scoring affair. I think this game's going to be like, this is going to sound crazy. Give me Ohio State 17-13.
Wow. Okay.
I think this is a low-scoring, drag them out.
Wow.
Who's tougher?
Okay.
And give me the Buckeyes by 4, 17-13. They get a big win, and they're, it's going to come down to the Michigan game this year, just like it does every year. But yeah, give me Ohio State by 4.
Essentially, it's it's these two teams in Michigan, obviously, but let's see, no, because they're all on the same side. That's right.
The West is terrible in the Big Ten, so. But hey, this is the last year there'll be divisions. After this, it'll be just whoever has the best records.
Kind of like the SEC, right?
Every conference, I think, will be doing that.
Well, you almost have to. I mean,
it is kind of unfair. Like, if Ohio State goes 11-1, like they did last year, they didn't make the conference championship, so they still made the playoffs, I guess. But it's like
the thing that I see about it, like in the Big Ten, it's so loaded on one side, and the other side, like they have chances. Like, who was it that won? Was it Purdue? That won? Who was that won the conference? Like not that long ago from the other.
I can't remember.
But anyway, like you essentially take that chance away by doing away with divisions. But I mean, I guess if you want to be successful, you gotta pick it up. You gotta pick up the pace. This is like I said, this is our game of the week. This is probably the game of the week to a lot of people. I think game day. I'm pretty sure game day is going to be up there for this game. Why wouldn't they be? What other game other than maybe that Alabama-Tennessee game is even close to not just a good game to watch, but we're talking about playoff ramifications here. I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be a low scoring, if this is going to be a moderate scoring game. I really don't know. And as much as I would like to say Penn State, it just I picture myself sitting there on Saturday, and when that timer, the clock hits 000, Ohio State's on top, and I think it's really close, like you did, like you said, 17-13, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give me I so want to pick Penn State, but we're
Hey,
not
go
going
with
on.
whatever your gut says, man. I mean, it's definitely possible.
Ooh, man, I think it's going to be like within. I'll do it. I'll say 28. Let me see here. What's the score going to be? I'm going to say Penn State 28-27.
Wow, 1 point. Taking the Nittany Lions on the road. Hey.
Look, that's fun, right? I mean, it's fun to kind of go against the grain.
We finally went against each other, too.
Yeah. Well, we had to change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we might be completely wrong on that, but regardless, look, it's, what did I say that the line was? 4.5 Ohio State. I figured that's about right. I mean,
2 points for home.
Yeah.
So they really think Ohio State's 2.5 points better. Not even a field goal better than Penn State. So, all right, man. Well, it was great to be back.
Man.
It was fun to talk. I bet it's better to talk to somebody than just be you and the mic.
It is. You know, you can sit here and talk a long time, and it's really easy to talk and kind of get long-winded, but it's definitely harder when you're on your own.
Yeah,
definitely. Man. But,
well,
man, what do you think? Like, I know we rated the SEC slate, but if you include, like, this Ohio State game, what's this week? What's the whole college football slate, in your opinion, like the grade?
I give it a 7.
7?
I mean, it's pretty good, but it's not. We've had better weeks this season. I can't remember what week that was where it was crazy. It was like 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It was an insane slate, like week 4 maybe.
Meat and potatoes is what I termed it when we reached the meat and potatoes of the season. It was like so many good matchups, yeah.
But, you know, I think it's a good slate. I think there'll be some good games. Looking forward to them. I'll definitely be tuned in. My daughter was born. I'll say that. Forgot to mention that. You know, I said that my wife was pregnant. That's why I've been away from the show for so long. She's beautiful and the greatest thing to ever happen to me besides salvation. But, yeah, my daughter was born. She's healthy, which is all you can really ask for. And I'm back. I'm glad to be back talking college football. Got some stuff going on this weekend, but I'll definitely be checking out at least a couple of these games. But you know, Brandon, I think that was a good show, and I think it's time to
put a bow on it.
If you will, take the exit and ride on out of here.
Ride on out of here.
And as you're listening on Spotify, please, you know, consider liking our podcast or whatever you do on Spotify, saving it. If you're on Apple, save the podcast so you can see our new episodes. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, like the video, comment, do all that fun stuff. Leave us a rating on Apple Pod. Our big thing, really, guys, we're really trying to push TikTok. Me and Brandon have about 0 experience on TikTok until recently.
We're kind of winging it.
We're trying to make content there because it is a way to get our content out. And we'd really appreciate you sharing our TikTok, sharing our podcast with your friends, and all that great stuff. But yeah, for Zack and Brandon and RideAlong Sports, we are out, and we will see you next week. Have a good one.
All right. See you guys. Peace. Week 8. Gotta love it.